try articulating this this argument, people look at me like I'm crazy, you know, and they say, well,
why the hell would that be? I just ate 20 milligrams of my edibles, so hopefully we're able to get through this video. Now, this is what the video is called from Gothix. Transphobia isn't real. Yeah, this is apparently like Gothix's new thing. Apparently it's just like denying reality. So transphobia isn't real, yet her face here on the screen has already proven the claim made in her title incorrect. Let's hear what Gothix has to say. Now, remember, we're dealing with one of the smartest people probably on planet Earth, so brace yourselves for this intellectual titan to deliver to us some of the most salient points imaginable.
What's up, everyone? My name is Gothix, and welcome to my channel. For today's video, I wanted to talk about transphobia and why that's not really a thing. So before
Hi, Gothix. We're ready to hear how that's not really a thing.
I make your heads explode by articulating this argument, I want to remind you that I started a second channel where I'll be streaming video games as well as providing commentary on the idiocy within gaming culture. So essentially exactly what I'm doing right here, but more geared towards gaming. And then you can also watch.
Okay, we don't care about your second channel, as if seeing you like seeing your face like once a month is enough for me. Okay, that's actually too much. That makes my head want to explode. So anyway, let's go, guys. High IQ argument about to slam us with the facts and logic. Get ready for your head to explode.
Try articulating this this argument. People look at me like I'm crazy, you know, and they say, well,
why the hell would that be?
Obviously, you would think that, transphobe, you know? And usually what happens is they will send me an article of a trans person getting killed or some type of hate crime, and they'll use this as a way to just.
Why is hate crime in quotes? Is there like do you not think hate crimes are real either? Yeah, you know, the KKK, they never committed any hate crimes. Their violence wasn't motivated by hatred towards certain minority groups. They just really liked to hang people.
Justify that transphobia exists. It's worth noting here that phobia means fear, and 90% of the time when people say transphobia, they're not actually describing fear. They're describing some type of bigotry or violence or.
Let's go ahead and look it up. Define transphobia. Dislike or strong prejudice against transgender people. Uh-oh. Well, Gothix, you told me it means you're scared. Ooh. I'm scared of trans people. That's not what the definition says, actually. It's dislike or strong prejudice against transgender people. So again, this entire video could have just not been made had she actually taken the time to type in a simple Google definition and then clicked the fucking enter key. But that wouldn't provide for very good content, now would it?
Something you know, it's not fear. I ain't afraid of nobody, all right? So in order for me to believe in transphobia, I would have to first believe in the idea of trans. And I don't. No. When people say, well, you're
What? I just don't believe in trans. They're not real. So all the trans people throughout history, were they just like, pretend? Were they just a figment of your imagination?
Denying my existence as a trans person, to that I would say, yes, I am. I am denying the existence and legitimacy of this concept of trans, because what is it you're trying to describe here? You are still describing a man or a woman. If you get more specific, you can say man who is confused about their gender, woman who is struggling with her identity. Either way, it's a man or a woman. Back in my day, a lot of people said that this was a mental disorder. Gender dysphoria, it's something that affects you psychologically.
So every single fucking time we go over these brain dead transphobe videos, they all do pretty much the identical thing. The same, well, I thought it was a mental illness, and then they go to gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a mental illness, Gothix, but not every single trans person, one, has gender dysphoria, and two, being trans in and of itself is not a mental illness. It's simply having gender dysphoria that's the mental illness, okay? This isn't that hard to understand, but then again, what the fuck would this dumb boomer know? You know, back in my day, we used to give people lobotomies when they were being all kooky.
I take it a step further and I say a spiritual disconnect. There's something internally, spiritually, that's off. Either way, it's abnormal. So if we take that.
Yes, you see, it's very abnormal. However, having a spiritual entity, first of all, she's a Christian. So believing in a spiritual entity that literally goes against the laws of nature and has some spiritual disconnect with people and their identity, that's completely fine, normal, A-okay, all right? Okay sign. Somebody being trans, it's abnormal. Also, just if it is abnormal, because statistically speaking, it is abnormal, doesn't mean it's bad, actually, like at all. Not even slightly. Like, do you think your fucking stupidity is normal? You're abnormal in how fucking dumb you are. I guess in that case it is wrong, but it's not always wrong to have things that are abnormal.
That argument and say, okay, this is a trans woman. Does that mean that this is an anorexic woman? Does that mean that this is a depressed woman? Does that mean, you know what I'm saying? If you were going to keep adding this label that your mental disorder is somehow making you into a different breed of human, then we have to apply that logic to literally.
Listen to this. Men and women you think are different breeds of human? Wait, how are you? They're both human, idiot. Different breed of human. Aw, doctor, I said that I wanted to get the purebred baby pulled from my uterus. Huh? What's going on here, doc? Oh my god, dude. We're all one breed, Gothix. It's called human, okay? If only she knew what words meant.
Every other single category, and we don't do that. We don't say anorexic woman. That's just a woman. She has anorexia, but it still doesn't change the fact that she's a woman. So this is what I mean by going back.
Because having anorexia is completely different than having an internal perception of yourself that aligns with cultural views of femininity. What? Having anorexia, what? I genuinely have no words. I don't even know how to respond. Is my edible hitting me already? Holy shit. God, how long have it? 3 minutes? Oh, man.
Back to the point that in order for me to believe in transphobia, I would have to first believe in trans. All I believe are people who are struggling with their identity, but they're still a man or a woman.
This is literally the exact logic as me saying, listen, guys, racism isn't real, okay? If somebody goes out and kills a black person while calling them racial slurs, well, first, for me to even believe that racism exists, I would first have to believe that black people are human. And since I don't, then racism isn't real. Checkmate, libtard. Unironically, the exact same fucking logic here. It's funny that all the time these transphobes accuse trans people of misconstruing reality or living in delusion. Meanwhile, you think that your own personal denial of the meanings of words somehow holds any weight here for this conversation? Get the fuck out of here, Gothix.
And trans is just a label to overemphasize their internal struggle. But there is a reason why people insist on using this trans label, and it is done so to deliberately collectivize thoughts in a particular group, and also to...
Maybe I'm definitely nitpicking now, but I gotta find out, is collectivize a word? Thank you, Gothix. We've learned a new word today. Please collectivize your brain cells before making another video, okay?
There is a reason why people insist on using this trans label, and it is done so to deliberately collectivize thoughts in a particular group, and also to embellish the severity of problems that that particular group deals with. So
I wonder if she thinks there's any problems that trans people experience that are unique to trans people. I genuinely wonder if she even thinks that exists. I feel like the last time we went over one of her videos, she made it sound like she didn't. So I don't know. But either way, I have no idea what she's talking about. She's just making shit up. She's unironically saying, well, transphobia isn't real because I have randomly and arbitrarily decided that being trans is fake. It's like, okay, cool. I don't give a shit.
This kind of ties into the concept of hate crimes. There's no such thing as hate crimes. There's none. There are crimes. So if we talk about transphobia in the context...
What? There's no such thing as hate crimes. She's actually doing it. Oh God, this is why I can't go over Gothix videos. Fuck. There are some people that they're so stupid I can laugh. With Gothix, it's like this infuriating feeling that I get, okay? I'm having an internal spiritual disconnect right now. Holy shit. There's no such thing as hate crimes. There's only crimes? What? Do you think that there can be such a thing as crime, but some crime can be motivated by hate? Is it possible? The KKK, guys. There was no hate crime involved there, okay? It was just crime. She's so stupid. Oh my god. You know what? Back in my day, we would have given this dumb bitch a lobotomy. Bring us back to the good old days.
Of, okay, this trans person was killed. What are you trying to convey? You're trying to articulate a sense of urgency or heighten what actually transpired to make it seem more severe than it actually is. Or
Gothix, please refrain from using words like transpired. That really subtly reinforces the indoctrination of the gender ideology. Thank you.
Or heighten what actually transpired to make it seem more severe than it actually is, or worse than it would be with another group of people. I don't condone it, but by you adding that label, what is it you're trying to convey other than trying to rile people up and make them assume that these people are being targeted? And even—
Wait, trans people, specifically trans women, are being targeted. She's probably not going to accept human rights campaign, but I don't give a shit. Fatal violence against the transgender and gender nonconforming community in 2021. 2021 has already seen at least 57 transgender or gender nonconforming people fatally shot or killed by other violent means. We say at least because too often these stories go unreported or misreported. In previous years, the majority of these people were Black and Latino transgender women. Transgender people over 4 times more likely than cisgender people to be victims of violent crime. Researchers analyzed pooled data from the 2017 and 2018 National Crime Victimization Survey. It's the first comprehensive and nationally representative criminal victimization data to include information on the gender identity and sex assigned at birth. Results showed that both transgender women and men had higher rates of violent victimization than their cisgender counterparts, but there were no differences between transgender men and women. Here are the key findings. Transgender people 16 plus, so 16-year-olds and older, I guess, are victimized over 4 times more often than cisgender people. In 2017 through 18, transgender people experienced 86.2 victimizations per 1,000 people compared to 21.7 victimizations per 1,000 people for cisgender people. God damn. Transgender men and women had higher rates of violent victimization. 1 in 4 transgender women who were victimized thought the incident was a hate crime compared to less than 1 in 10 cisgender women. In 2017 through 18, transgender households had higher rates of property victimization than cisgender households. About half of all violent victimizations were not reported to police. Transgender people were as likely as cisgender people to report violence to police. So there's just some stats for you there, Gothix. So yeah, when people say like, hey, here was a trans girl who was just murdered, it is supposed to imply a sense of urgency. You got that right. Because there is a sense of urgency when we're talking about an already marginalized minority group getting murdered disproportionately. Like, that's kind of important, you know?
If, let's just say, rile people up and make them assume that these people are being targeted. And even if, let's just say for the sake of the argument, there was some type of killer that wrote a manifesto about how he hated trans people and he deliberately went out of his way to kill these people, it doesn't negate the fact that he still killed people. So saying that he killed trans people, it doesn't actually change anything. He's still killing. Here's another example.
What? You are so— I refuse to believe that you're actually this fucking stupid. God, maybe I should have taken another edible because I'm about to say the R slur. I cannot handle this. Let me go back. I'm getting triggered.
Kill trans people.
Yeah, okay, so it does matter actually, Gothix, because yes, you are right that the results are ultimately the same as in people were murdered, and that's sad. However, if we want to prevent future murder, then the motive behind certain murders is kind of important. What? Guys, it doesn't matter that this dude killed somebody because he was trying to save his family, and this other guy killed somebody because he really likes the taste of blood, okay? People died both times. Obviously, the motive and the inspiration behind why this crime took place is going to be relevant.
It doesn't actually change anything. He's still killing. Here's another example. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, I don't like a trans person. I say, I don't like you. And they say back to me, you're transphobic. Can I then say they're Christian phobic? Can I then say they're reality phobic? Can I call—
You're contradicting your own argument. In order for you to call them Christian phobic, you would first have to understand the motive for them calling you transphobic. So if they were to look at you and say, hey, are you religious by any chance? And you said, yeah, I'm a Christian. And then they were like, oh, so you're probably just a fucking transphobe. You realize that if you're going to come to the conclusion that it's Christian phobic, you would have to know the motivation, the inspiration behind why you were called that to begin with? You're contradicting your own point right now. It's murder no matter what. Somebody says you're transphobic, now that means they're being Christian phobic? Also, for somebody to say that trans people are being reality phobic when she is denying statistical realities and historical realities is quite hilarious. The irony there is it has not gone unnoticed.
Reality phobic? Can I call them some other type of phobic? Of course not. It doesn't fit the narrative. It's only one-sided here. So essentially what these labels are doing, it's creating this sort of a protected class or a class of people that can benefit off of preferential treatment. It's because you fall into this category.
How is asking to not be murdered and not to be disrespected and invalidated in your literal identity asking for special privileges? First of all, whether we want to say it's a privilege or not, you actually have a right in this society specifically. Because you, an American, pay tax dollars, which go to the police, you actually have a right to not be murdered. That is not a privilege. That's a fucking right. So if you've been deprived that right, there's a problem there. Asking to not be murdered disproportionately is not asking for preferential treatment. Second of all, it's true that you do not have a right to other people's respect. However, if we want to live in a civilized society, then we more or less recognize that there is a bare minimum of respect that we tend to give people for the sake of continuing the functionality of society. And I feel like that's what trans people are largely asking for. Just stop with the whole saying they're not real when they are in front of you. Stop trying to take away trans healthcare and just be respectful and move on. They're not asking for special privileges. They're asking to be referred to in a way that you would refer to any other person and to not be disproportionately murdered.
We have to pay attention to you more. We have to take you more seriously. We have to protect you. It's inevitably creating this.
Yeah, that's what a protected class is, Gothix. That's what a protected class is. It's recognizing that a marginalized group is possibly more prone to certain discrimination, biases, violence, etc. So they are a protected group. Yes. Congratulations, Gothix. You have figured it out. Why are you not a legal scholar, my big-brained friend?
Dynamic of oppressed versus oppressors. So in the pursuit of protecting trans people, even though they're literally just men or women that are struggling with their identity, in the pursuit of that...
So you realize that even if I were to concede what she's saying here, even if I were to say, you know what, Gothix, fine. For the sake of argument, let's concede that trans people are just men or women struggling with their identity. Whatever. That still does not mean that they're not necessarily a protected class. Because if you have a large percentage, I know trans people are a very small percentage of the overall population, but there's enough trans people that exist to, obviously it means something, right? So if you have a decent sized group of people who are confused in their gender identity, according to Gothix, those people should also be treated with respect. And if those people, due to the fact that they're confused, are disproportionately victimized by violence and discrimination, they might also qualify as a protected class. Even if you were right about your dementia-ridden ramble about how trans people are actually pretend or some weird shit, even if you were correct on all of that, it doesn't negate the fact that trans people should be a protected class.
Then make enemies out of half of the population. You can then use that for political gain, for more power. Because let's think about this for a second.
How are trans people in their day-to-day life asking not to be murdered and to please just be treated with a basic amount of human dignity? How are they trying to get political power? Is this what it is? The next time a trans person is like, hey, I actually go by they, them pronouns. Would you mind just using those to refer to me? Inside they're thinking, they're doing the rubbing their hands together, the dog whistle rubbing of hands together. Pronouns today, power tomorrow. Lightning crashes. I think Gothix has actually cracked the code.
Who do you think, if we're looking at the vast majority of people who identify in this way as trans, and we can even say the same thing about the LGBTQIA plus minus community, who do you think their political...
Ha 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 ha. Why are you not a stand-up comedian? I have never heard that hilarious joke before. Adding random letters and symbols at the end of LGBT acronym? Come on. That is some hysterical comedy. What's next? Guys, I bet I can guess. Next she's gonna... I can barely say without cackling. It's so funny. Next she's probably gonna say she identifies as an attack helicopter.
Legion say the same thing about the LGBTQIA plus minus community. Who do you think their political allegiance is normally reserved for? To answer this, all you have to do is consider how many times you hear political leaders talk about representation, inclusion, and diversity, and trans rights, and who.
You realize that the Republicans do the same thing. So the implication she's making here, or so it seems, thus far, it seems as though the implication she is making is that by trans people wanting their rights and Democrats being sympathetic to that, it means that trans people are more likely to vote Democrat. So it's an agenda to get the Democrats power. You realize, Gothix, this is how politics work, right? How do you know that you are not being used by the Republican Party? For example, and I'm not making this up, Gothix has denied the election of 2020. She genuinely believes that there was election fraud and that the election was stolen. She's actually that fucking stupid. How do you know that you are not being duped or deceived or lied to so that the Republicans can gain power, Gothix? Because when we talk about broad statistics, trans people are still a pretty small minority. I don't think they have the power to sway an election. On the flip side, Donald Trump lying to his supporters that the election was stolen casts doubt on the electoral process and does at least open the door for him to potentially continue gaining power or continue holding the power he already held. There's way more of a vested interest in regards to power for the fucking Republicans to lie to you, Gothix, about a stolen election than there is for Democrats to say that, yeah, trans people shouldn't be murdered. What are you saying right now? You're so dumb, man.
Who tends to do that more? What political party? I think it's pretty obvious. So it's consolidating all of the votes, essentially. It's creating an army of sorts. And I really don't like saying this, but it's creating an army of useful idiots. And I don't like saying that, but
does she actually lack this much self-awareness? She denied the election. You were that group of useful idiots. Gothix. Not only were you in the group of useful idiots, okay? You were the fucking sergeant of that army. Okay? You were leading them into battle. You were the useful idiot. How are trans people useful idiots if they vote for the Democrats who are far more sympathetic to their own struggles? What, like, huh? Are the Democrats the ones saying, like, actually, trans is real? Nancy Pelosi getting up there with her fucking research paper. Here's gender dysphoria and the treatment of cross-hormone sex hormone. Like, what are you talking about? I actually am shocked that she would be an election denier and she thinks it's the trans people who are the group of useful idiots for the Democrats. The irony and the lack of self-awareness. Oh my God. If Gothix ever actually grows like more than 3 brain cells, she's going to look back at this one day and be so embarrassed.
An army of useful idiots. And I don't like saying that, but it's true. It's an army of useful idiots who are blindly going to...
Suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop doesn't count as election interference? First of all, it was Twitter that like stopped the hashtag for like, wasn't it like 5 to 7 hours? No, that's not election interference, you numbskull. Not at all. A private company censoring a story is not election interference.
It's true. It's an army of useful idiots who are blindly going to protect the savior of trans rights, whoever that political leader is. And we know who that leader is, right?
If we're going to go this way, trans people are also disproportionately further left. And a lot of them seem to hate the Democrat establishment. There's so much wrong here. Okay. I think we should just at this point kind of smile and wave. I've said this before, but I have to unfortunately keep using this example. It's a lot like visiting your grandma at the nursing home when she's like dementia ridden, gonna be gone here pretty soon. Just that's nice, Gothix. Yeah. Oh, I bet you did that. Wow, that is so cool. Smile, nod, make them feel validated, leave.
You guys see rights, whoever that political leader is, and we know who that leader is, right? I want you guys to use your brain and really think about it here. I'm hoping this video reaches people that...
I'll crack a deal with you, Gothix, okay? If you start using your brain, I will start to use my brain even more so to then come to the conclusion that you're trying to imply it's the Democrats who are the leader of the trans people, even though that really doesn't make any sense in regards to their attempt at gaining power. But how about you use your brain first, okay?
people are insistent on using the trans label, and it's because without that label, they can't effectively victimize that group of people. If they were just direct and said, okay, you are a man that's struggling with your identity, you're a woman that is confused about your gender, right? It wouldn't have the same effectiveness. But if you say trans, it implies some type of marginalized.
What? Couldn't you say the same thing for like disabled people? Refers to people who struggle with various degrees of disabilities, whether it's physical or mental? Like, is that so that we can make people realize how marginalized disabled people are? No, it's just describing people with the labels that define what they are. It's called using words, Gothix. It's very simple, actually. Let me try to break this down for you, you fucking piece of shit. So first and foremost, we have this little thing. It's called, drumroll, language, okay? It means that we say words, and certain words that we say have definitions and meanings. And if you know what those definitions and meanings of those words are, you can effectively communicate with other people speaking the same language. Does that help at all? Maybe just a little bit? So if you're saying, hey, here's a trans person, you're describing a person who is trans. That's what you're doing. If you say a disabled person, you're describing a person who is disabled, like you, Gothix. This is not, let's make people feel like they're marginalized for more Democrat power? What?
Disenfranchised group of people that need protection and they need a political savior. Somewhat recently, there was some type of a mass shooting that happened. I believe it was in Colorado, and the headlines insinuated that this was an act that was deliberately targeting LGBTQIA.
Gunman kills 5 at LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado Springs. You'd have to read that headline and be looking for something to get mad about. Okay, my edible is starting to hit, and it's mixing in with my extreme rage, and it's definitely affecting my ability to articulate my words. So there's nothing wrong with this headline. It describes what happened.
Was deliberately targeting LGBTQIA plus minus people. But if you take that label out of it and you just say mass shooting at nightclub as opposed to a mass shooting at an LGBTQ nightclub, it doesn't have the same effect.
It doesn't give you as much information. It doesn't have the same effect because one gives you far less information. What are you talking about? Gunman kills 5 at Colorado nightclub? Yeah, that would be pretty terrifying to read. There was more information included because it was an LGBTQ nightclub. It didn't even say 5 LGBTQ people killed. It just said it was an LGBTQ nightclub.
Having these headlines with these labels, you're deliberately trying to invoke a certain type of emotion and then position yourself as a political savior that will then create legislation to protect.
It's funny because I think what's happening is she reads that and maybe she feels some kind of an emotional response. Like, I've been seeing a lot of headlines that make it seem like gay people are being victimized here. And because that kind of gives her that feeling of maybe, I don't know, very unfamiliar feelings like empathy, perhaps, then she takes that as like the Democrat manipulation. I wonder if that's the case. Maybe she means to say that she herself reads headlines and gets certain emotional feelings, and then some of those emotional feelings that make her uncomfortable, she then starts to just assume that it's probably the Democrat manipulation.
These groups of people. And they do this by saying, hey, if you support me, I'll pass through this legislation to make your life better. But these new laws are all...
Guys, holy shit. Let me take a deep breath. Have you ever heard a politician say, if you vote for me, I'll pass certain legislation to make your life better? What is this insanity? It almost sounds like you're describing American politics and the most standard foundational levels of a fucking election. My head is gonna explode. My tiny soy boy lefty brain is about to just burst in like a very quiet, like, this is unfathomable. How has nobody thought of this? Why have other politicians not thought, hey, maybe if I tell people, if you vote for me, I'll pass legislation to make your life easier. God, think of how many more elections could have been won.
Examples that I can give to illustrate this is, again, if we're talking about these mass shootings that appear to be targeting trans people, you can then propose a law that would strip gun ownership away from people that had nothing to do with that situation. And the other...
This just happens with any shooting. Anytime there's a shooting, people, usually talk about legislation to stop gun violence.
And the other example that I can give is this attempt to make gender affirmation procedures more readily available, particularly for the youth, and also forcing the rest of society to pay for these procedures. And how do they do this?
The rest of society pay for these procedures? Gothix, are you confused about what country we live in? Oh no. Did you forget that you're in America? We don't pay for their surgeries. That would be covered by insurance, which is private right now. That's why people like me talk about having a public option. You can't make that argument until my correct view is implemented, okay?
And how do they do this? They justify it by relying on research that also relies on the trans label. So,
here we go. Okay, so research is in quotes. Get ready, everybody. Not only does Gothix know more than medical institutions, she also knows what is and isn't real, legitimate research based purely on looking at it. You know the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover? For Gothix, it's the opposite, okay? She can judge a study by its cover. She just looks at it. And if she sees the words trans or gay or LGBT, pretty much if she doesn't see like heterosexual in like giant bold letters, she knows with godlike certainty that that research is fake. Impressive stuff. We should all be really listening here, okay? Because this woman is so smart.
By relying on research that also relies on the trans label. So one example is there is a higher suicidal ideation among trans people.
Oh, please tell me that this is fake research.
Without that label, they can't justify this narrative. And by the way, it's
oh my God. Not without that label, you wouldn't be able to justify it, Gothix. Without that label, without the knowledge that there's a higher than average suicide rate, specifically amongst the trans community, again, that informs the solution. She thinks this is like a Marxist ploy when it's just logic 101. Trans people kill themselves more than other people do. Are we supposed to be like, well, if we just pretend they're not trans, then it's just like this random scattered people that have a little bit higher suicide rates. That's not going to fix shit. By actually acknowledging the fact that trans people have a higher than average suicide rate, that informs the solution to that issue.
Without that label, they can't justify this narrative. And by the way, it's no wonder that there is a high suicidal ideation with this particular group because, gender dysphoria is psychological. If not psychological, then spiritual. But they think fixing...
I'm sorry. Wow. So not only does she know more than medical institutions, she can judge a study by its cover. Now she is lecturing us on the existence of a metaphysical realm. I think it's that like right now my edible is definitely hitting me pretty hard. So it's like my third eye is opening up. And I'm just realizing the brilliance emitting from this computer screen. It's almost too much. It's almost too much to bear.
Gender dysphoria is psychological. If not psychological, then spiritual. But
all right, okay, yeah. So you realize that if we were going to go your route, Gothix, then by your logic, you saying that gender dysphoria, one, exists and two, is psychological, is also in line with the narrative that some trans people need affirmation/operations. Like, you realize that, right? Because by saying gender dysphoria is a psychological problem, you're implying that if it's a problem psychologically, there has to be some treatment, or at least a search for a treatment. And that can sometimes be puberty blockers, social transition, pronouns, etc. So, okay. Based on her own logic, her just saying that is actually conceding that treatment needs to occur.
Think fixing it is sacrificing these people to be eternal slaves to Big Pharma. And the other example that I can give is this attempt.
Guys, do you realize how much bigger industries exist from Big Pharma? Do you know how many do you know how many more lucrative illnesses there are, Gothix, than like a small proportion of the population sometimes getting a sex reassignment surgery? Like, if you're going to go conspiracy mode on us, why have we not heard that I bet Big Pharma's hiding the cure to cancer? Because that way they can keep on profiting off of people with cancer. I'm pretty sure that cancer is the largest money-making industry within Big Pharma, which is disgusting and fucked up just saying it like that. Further evidence, by the way, that we need to have a public option available. So one, it doesn't even make sense when you look at how many larger industries exist for much more significant and profitable illnesses? And second of all, why do you keep on whining about big pharma, but yet anytime anything public option is discussed, you think it's Marxist? Anytime there's anything slightly progressive, you shit on it, but yet you simultaneously complain about big pharma. It's almost as though you can advocate against the solution and complain about the solution to profit from it, Gothix.
To create legislation that punishes businesses and individuals for misgendering someone, not using the right pronoun. And this is done under the guise of...
I'm done. I can't do any more of this. I'm getting too much of a headache. Okay, that's Gothix 10 minutes in. Felt like a literal eternity. Holy shit. And yeah, basically what we've learned here is that if Gothix pretends that words have different meanings than what they actually mean, then she can sort of explain away the fact that she most likely feels an uncomfortable tummy ache when she sees the sad reality that gay people, trans people, LGBTQ people in general do seem to be disproportionately being targeted. So in summary, kids, what have we learned from this video? Don't be a worthless cunt like this Gothix piece of shit, okay? You have the power to identify as a decent human being with the ability to feel empathy. And if you can't feel empathy, then just talk to somebody about that, okay? That's what we've learned, kids. Be nice, don't be mean, and don't ever watch a Gothix video seriously.